Okay, I am doing this because I'm curious to start offering these mini addresses um, in the form of just me talking into the camera. I'm not great at these. I have a super autistic brain flaw where I can't freestyle. In college, my friends would always get drunk and freestyle rap, and I couldn't do it. I literally was incapable. I can't, my mind doesn't work in such a way to think on the spot that way. And I've received feedback from people that, hey, dude, stop fucking talking and just write because you're such a better writer than you are a talker, which is true, which I recognize and I know this. Um, yeah, the writing, the magic, I can feel it in the fingers, whereas talking, I don't have that gift of gab off the cuff. You know, I can write speeches, but I can't just talk. So this is my attempt at getting better at that. I actually just appeared on a weird live stream watching some Russian movie, and in that I spoke. I was put on the spot to like come up with an ad campaign in like 2 seconds, not 30 seconds. If I was given like a minute, I could do it. I could do it like really well, but I can't just let it flow like that, like just immediately. And you know, and that's why I can't freestyle. My mind can't move quick enough to, or just flow, allow itself to flow enough to just rhyme words without trying. I have to write it down. And it was the same thing with this thing. These guys put me on the spot, and they were like, "Come up with an ad campaign with this thing now," and I just had to like let it flow out, and I could not do it. Like I sounded like a complete fucking retard because I just could not. My brain couldn't formulate that. So anyway, this is me attempting to get more comfortable with speaking. I also really love Pete Quinones, his little addresses. He gives these little addresses to people, and he does it with this sort of emotion, and he really sort of captures the emotion of the week. And he gives advice. It really feels like a leader talking to his people. So I really admire what he does, and I would like to be able to replicate that because I think it's nice to have these little sort of check-ins about what's going on. Um, so what is this one going to be about? This one is going to be about MartyrMade, Trump, and Jewishness. So everybody has been talking about this. Everybody, basically, MartyrMade is a great history podcaster, and he appeared on Tucker Carlson and sort of challenged the narrative of World War II. And this triggered many accounts that happen to be Jewish but don't necessarily always hold themselves out to be Jewish to come out and sort of spin what MartyrMade had said and say, why are we relitigating World War II? MartyrMade is wrong. Um, it was just this like immune reaction, and I'll get into immune reactions in a second, from a lot of these Jewish people who, and again, it would be one thing if they were holding themselves out as Jewish, but they're not. So I think that the people on the right understandably, given where we are, say, well, what the fuck? Why can somebody not simply question World War II? It's very well researched. Why can MartyrMade not ask these questions without this entire media, all these media personalities suddenly coming out and condemning him, and then, oh, you Google and oh, that person's Jewish, and that person's Jewish, and that person's Jewish, and then this creates, of course, this self-fulfilling issue that Jews have always faced, where it creates this. In the short run, maybe it's great because it prevents Jew hatred or whatever it is, but in the long run, it creates this overwhelming feeling of I'm being manipulated. I am. I thought that this guy is Seth Dillon, the guy who runs the Babylon Bee, one of these people. They think Babylon Bee has nothing to do with being Jewish. The Daily Wire has nothing to do with being Jewish, supposedly. Yet every single time on every single Jewish issue, these media leaders, Dave Portnoy, the guy, Barstool guy, they all come out and, oh, what do you know? They are pro-Israel. defending the narrative that the Jews are victims every single time, right? And they just so happen to be Jewish. And so that drives people crazy. It makes people think, well, what the fuck? All these people are actually just shills. They're not actually, they don't really stand for what they're saying. They're just here, I think in the minds of a lot of people, they think that they're being paid by Israel in some capacity to kind of like present this immune system to any ideas that are going into the no-go zone, which is maybe the narrative of World War II with regard to Jews isn't exactly what we've been told. And I completely sympathize with this, man. Like what we're told about World War II, it's like Star Wars. It's like bad guys, good guys, and we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. And you don't, it's like, why did Hitler do this? Oh no, just one day he showed up and he decided to hate all Jews for scapegoat reasons. And that's, of course, ridiculous, right? Especially given that Jews have had this same story for over and over again of coming into a country, they add value, they do good things, but then it starts to rot. People start seeing them as landlords and manipulators and blah, 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 and then they get kicked out or they get reduced in status. This has happened over and over and over again over history. And in fact, it happens in the Old Testament, which I want to talk about here a little bit today. So it's like this pattern is not new at all. And I think that a lot of people discover this. I have this theory that the most toxic thing in the world of red pills is when you get a red pill, whether it's about women or human biodiversity or Jews or whatever it is, you get this, or gays, you get the red pill. And it's such a powerful force being red pilled, right? It's like being ripped out of the matrix. You get ripped out of the matrix. And that force like propels you forward in this way. But if it's too powerful, it dominates your entire being. Like the force, sort of dictates how you see everything. Then it's like rose-colored glasses. There's a great Bob Dylan lyric. What's the Bob Dylan lyric? Speaking of Jews, but good Jews. Bob Dylan. See, this is why I suck at talking live. Yeah, she's soon to be divorced. I helped her out of a jam, I guess, but I use a little too much force. It's like, people get this red pilling and then they spend the next few years completely dedicated to, it's like, imagine women, you realize women are hypergamous, and then you're now defined by talking about hypergamy all the time. You're defined by it. And it's like, it's not, these things are red pills, but they're not ideologies, right? This is not an ideology. And that's what I sort of want to forward here. Okay, so why am I talking about this? I'm a Mischling. Mischling, by the way, is not a Jewish word. Mischling is a word that comes from Hitler, I think. And that means I'm half Jewish. My mother is Jewish. My father is WASP. There's a lot of that combo, but usually actually most of the guys who you find out are Mischlings in our space for whatever reasons are dad Mischlings, not mom Mischlings. But for me, I was raised among Reform Jews, which are the ultra liberal Jews. I never felt comfortable. I was never included. I was included in the sense I was invited to dinners. I was invited to Shabbat dinner, but I was never cultivated as a Jew, right? Nobody ever sat me down and said, Isaac, you really should, try to read the Torah. And, that didn't happen until 4 years ago when I met Chabad. And Chabad is the good type of Judaism where it's about being a good person and it's about following the Torah. But before that, Reform Judaism to me was always something I wasn't included in, and it was also gross to me. It was a lot of gay shit. You have the rabbi who's the woman, who's the gay lesbian rabbi, and it was just about sort of vague liberal signaling. I always really hated it, and I didn't want any part of it. my parents actually asked me if I wanted to go to Hebrew school when I was young. And I was like, no, ew. Like, I don't really want anything to do with these people. I did do birthright. So that was the one time I've actually ever gotten any advantage from being a Jew, at least that I could perceive, because you get a free trip to Israel. But I came back I did this trip called Stand With Us, which is like hardcore political Zionism, non-religious. It's like the worst of all worlds. It's just like, let's kill the Palestinians because, it's some vague political reason. The religious side is the side that is cool and that is interesting and actually spiritual. And I didn't find all that until much later. But anyway, I came back from Israel hating the whole thing. And I had a really serious period of like serious Jew self-hatred, which I'll talk about in a second. But why should I, as a Mischling, be allowed to weigh in, or not allowed, but why should I be weighing into this? Like, for the people who are, on the really Jewish side of things, they're probably like, well, you're just not, you're not really one of us. And the people on the other side are like, well, you're a fucking Jew. Like, fuck you. You can't tell us anything. And that really drives me nuts. I hate the worst feeling in all of this is for me personally, when I have somebody on my podcast or when I am interacting with somebody and I say I'm Jewish, which I always try to say up front. I don't try not to lie about it. It's hard though, man, because I hate when then that person goes and they're now weird. They now don't respond to my text, or they act strangely or differently towards me. That really fucking sucks, because guess what, man? I got here, as I always say, I got here just like everybody else. I perceive the same things. I am infuriated by certain things that Jewish people do. I'm also impressed by some of the things that they do. And I also feel very, I have a Jewish soul, man. There's nothing I can do about it. I feel, Bob Dylan, it's like reading my brain. Same thing with the Torah, honestly. Like, latter passages of the Torah, it's like very much my understanding. Leonard Cohen, I'm one of these types. So, I feel conflicted. Now, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, you're trash, right? You're a half breed. And as a half breed, you can't even, of course you're going to be confused. Oh, sorry. People will say, well, unfortunate. You're an unfortunate half breed. Might as well, just kill yourself, because you're tainted. You're a mutt. You're never going to be a part of this one way or another. Of course you're confused. You're at war with yourself. And I can understand why this is, but I have this passage from Nietzsche that I want to read that is about being mixed in this way. And this gives me a lot of hope as a Mischling, as somebody who can participate in these conversations. So this is from, oh man, I actually don't even remember which Nietzsche this is from. I have a Zarathustra quote later, but this is from Beyond Good and Evil. Okay. So the man of an age of dissolution, which mixes the races with one another, who has the inheritance of a diversified descent in his body, that is to say, contrary and often not contrary instincts and standards of value, which struggle with one another and are seldom at peace. Such a man of late culture and broken lights will, on average, be a weak man. His fundamental desire is that war which is in him should come to an end. Happiness appears to him in the character of a soothing medicine and mode of thought. For instance, Epicurean or Christian, and this is like, Epicureanism is like my medicine for sure. It is above all things the happiness of repose, of undisturbedness, of repletion, of final unity. It is the Sabbath of Sabbaths, to use the expression of the holy rhetorician, St. Augustine, who was himself such a man. God, Nietzsche, there is nobody better. But, okay, here's second paragraph. Should, however, the contrariety and conflict in such natures operate as an additional incentive and stimulus to life, and if, on the other hand, in addition to their powerful and irreconcilable instincts, they have also inherited and indoctrinated into them a proper mastery and subtlety for carrying on the conflict within themselves, that is to say, the faculty of self-control and self-deception, There then arise those marvelously incomprehensible and inexplicable beings, those enigmatical men predestined for conquering and circumventing others, the finest examples of which are Alcibiades and Caesar, with whom I should like to associate the first of Europeans, according to my taste, the Hohenstaufen Frederick II, and among artists, perhaps Leonardo da Vinci. They appear precisely in the same periods when that weaker type, with its longing for repose, comes to the front. These two types are complementary to each other and spring from the same causes. So what are we seeing here? It gives me chills just to read that. So right now, we're obviously in one of these moments. We are in one of these moments where the soy-lennial Disney guzzler has, many Michelins, many mixed race people are the Disney guzzler. The Goy Block enjoyer. They are very present and they're very in control. And, it's true. Like, I spent so much of my life drinking, drugging, and it's to quell this pain of confusion that's within me, right? So I hope to be one of these second types. I hope to be somebody who can get this stuff under control and, have this fire within that can be used for good versus be used to just numb the masses, with porn or, any of these other things. Okay, so a quick segue or a quick little moment on my journey in anti-Semitism. So, again, I see all these things that everybody is realizing now on the right and the left, by the way. I think the thing that's important to remember is the left has also, since October 7th, pretty much become openly anti-Semitic, the far left. So it's very interesting, right? Like this paper tiger that was, the fear of being called anti-Semitic is kind of done. It's like people they're not really scared of it. And it started with the left, as everything always does, right? And now the right it's now being on the right. You're seeing people like MartyrMade who are just like, whatever. I mean, he did reply with one of these little addresses about, how, look, the Jews, these people. He offered sort of testimony from Jews during the Holocaust. And it was obviously designed to say, like, look, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just asking questions here, which I don't know. Look, I don't want to get in MartyrMade's head. I don't even really want to talk about his ideas because I'm not prepared to do that. But that's just how he kind of signaled. In any case, I had this period of like really obsessive anti-Semitism where, you're Googling people's early lives. I made a post in those days on Reddit where I said, why does nobody talk about the fact that 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 of university presidents are Jewish? Like, why is that not like discussed? Isn't that somehow relevant? And it just got deleted from Reddit immediately. It literally got they didn't even save it. It was just gone after I posted it. And then, the one place I could post it was in the Jewish subreddit. So that it goes with a little bit of what I want to say here, which is like, it's actually the Jews that are more aware of this stuff than they seem, or at least the good Jews. Good Jews are very aware of this stuff. One of those good Jews, or who's aware of this stuff, is David Mamet. And during this period, I saw a book. I didn't read it, but I saw a book of his called The Wicked Son that is like pretty much written directly to Jews. And there's the advice in it is, to the Jews whose favorite Jew is Anne Frank, who bow the head reverently at a baptism and have never attended a bris, to you who find your religion and race repulsive, your ignorance of your history a satisfaction, here is a book from your brother. The world hates Jews, the world hates you. So he's talking to me. Mamet is talking to a younger, probably version of himself, who goes through this period of sort of fervent fury and paranoia about Jewishness. And of course, that comes from the censorship of the anything that questions the victim status of Jews, right? I also, during this period, There's a, I think it's Letitia James or somebody in New York does a list of the worst landlords in New York to kind of shame them. I created the same list for LA, and it was very difficult. And I did it for Curbed, and I had a Jewish editor. Uh, and she didn't care that all the names on the list were Jewish. Almost all. They weren't all. Actually, there was like an Indian guy, and there was a Asian guy, Chinese guy. But, the top 10 were 8 out of 10 Jewish, just like in New York. And, this was definitely driven by this anger of me to be like, what is going on? Why are these Jews mistreating everybody? And it got taken down. It got taken down for various reasons that I don't really feel like getting into, but it basically got censored because of like litigiousness on the parts of other people, but also the editor was a complete idiot. So it was sort of her fault. Actually, funnily enough, for that piece that I wrote, they made some art. They made some cartoon art, and the cartoon art showed a white man. The reason I brought this up to them, they showed the like art for that because it was a big art. This was going to be like a big feature, and it had art depicting like a white landlord screwing over like brown people. And I said to them, wait a second. When it came out, I was like, I don't want my name anywhere near that art because it's not white people screwing over brown people. It's every name on this list is Jewish or brown and some other, and a lot of the names on the list were brown Jews, particularly in LA. You have the Persians, you have these like Indian Jews that have like specific names, and they were the worst offenders, not the Ashkenazis. So it was like, you have this flipped, bro. Like the people screwing people over are Jews screwing over other people. Are you gonna make that a cartoon? Is that gonna be your cartoon? Like people with long noses? I don't think you're gonna make that your cartoon. Jewish editor working distantly for Ezra Klein. Like, come on. I mean, today though, those lefties probably would do that because now the Overton window has shifted, and the whole thing is collapsing. In any case, during this period, I was very immersed in all this stuff. I appeared on the TRS show, which I had no idea what I was getting into. And I saw a few things that I think will help you to kind of understand like my perspective on this. Ads. I'm an ad guy. I'm the disgraced propagandist. So this, of course, is sort of how I fixate on things, how I think about things. At that time, there were 3 different ads that I saw that made me crazed with anti-Semitism. And one was my roommate, who was Jewish, made ads for commemorative coins. And they were sort of directed towards like old people sitting at home who were they were like America coins. They were like a eagle, like and they were designed to just sell. They were crap. There was probably tin crap. But he was making these really manipulative, like infomercials designed for these people at home. And everybody in his organization was Jewish. They were all Orthodox religious Jews. And I was like, bro, can't you see how fucking fucked up this is? Like you're just manipulating these people. And he was like, no, what do you mean? They want it. They want the thing. What's wrong with this? And I had been harboring these sort of thoughts at the time. And I started like, when I would come home drunk and we'd all be, drinking till 4 a.m. I was still young then. I started having these like heated arguments with him and this other like younger Jewish guy about like, Jewish influence. Right. And what I realized in starting to talk to them was, well, here, let me just say, there was 2 other ads at the time. One was Cars for Kids, which is this organization that makes it seem like you're giving cars to kids, and then it's big in LA, and then you realize it's actually a Jewish organization. It's patronage, right? You're giving cards to like Jewish kids, basically. And then another one is the worst one. There was this infomercial at the time that was it was almost comical. I wish I could find it. It was like running on Fox News during the day, and it was like donating money to starving Jews across the world. So it's like swindling, it's like tricking Christians who are on par, far less well-to-do than Jews on an international basis, obviously, to like give their money to like help the starving Jew. and it was just so absurd. And I was just like, this is the most evil shit I have ever seen in my entire life. It's just pure manipulation. And there's these poor Christian flyover state people are seeing this and they're like, oh, I must help the poor starving Jew. And it was just infuriating, but beyond belief. But I started talking to these guys about it, and they were religious, and one of them was religious, and I just kind of realized like they were already conscious of all this stuff. Like I wasn't actually telling them anything they didn't know, you know. And in recent times, I've been trying to find my religion. I've been trying to reconcile, not be hateful towards who I am, and not be hateful towards my soul and my personhood. So I've been studying Torah, and I recently came across the story of Joseph. So the story of Joseph, I am the last person in the world who should be talking about biblical anything, but in my really, really basic ass understanding of it, the story of Joseph is he's the guy with the cool dream coat. He's kind of a handsome guy. He becomes what's called there's a name for it. It's like the court Jew of the Pharaoh of Egypt. And so he's the first archetype of the court Jew. And he's like the number two. He becomes the number two. His family abandons him, and he moves to Egypt and becomes the number two of the Pharaoh. And there's this massive drought in Egypt. And what Joseph does is he gets a message from God, and so he prepares everybody. He prepares everybody else for this drought by saying, store your food for 7 years. But for some reason or another, because of God, all of the stuff that the Egyptians themselves saved rots, whereas only the stuff that Joseph has saved, only the food that Joseph has saved, is not rotten. So he and the Pharaoh, because he's number two for the Pharaoh, now control all the food in the entire country of Egypt during this horrible famine. And they sell it back to people, right? So they sell the food back to people, and people give up everything. They give up their houses, they give up their land, they give up their money, they give up all of their resources so that they can eat during this time. So at the end of the famine, what happens? You have Pharaoh and Joseph owning everything, right? And then Joseph starts to do, I think this might not even be in the actual text, but this is like the rabbis or the people kind of editorializing later. They say that Joseph then did some weird stuff with like the houses. He like kicks people out of their houses after he owned everything. He kicked people out of their houses. He made them move around. And literally in this book, written entirely by very religious Jews, it says he did this so that the other Jews could come to Egypt and feel not like exiles, whereas the native Egyptians they wouldn't feel comfortable in their own home, basically. So, but they wouldn't be able to then point to the Jews and say, you're different than us. So it's like, speaking till today, the thing that the anti-Semite says today is this is exactly what the Jews are doing, the Jews, which doesn't exist, but what the Jews are doing to Western civilization today, right? They're mortgaging everybody, kicking them out of their house, basically, and filling it with immigrants. And this is all for some vague notion that it's on behalf of Israel, because Israel, blah, blah, blah. The Jews feel not at home, so everybody must be an immigrant. And it's insane. It's like literally in the book. It's in the old book, this process. But what is this a precursor to? This is a precursor to all the Jews in Egypt being enslaved. That's what happens right after Joseph. They then get enslaved. And that's when the whole story of Moses happens, of escaping and yada, yada, yada. So this process that is living in the minds of the anti-Semites, it's living in the mind of Jews who know what they're talking about, this process of Jews is going on since the original book that's in Christianity. So this isn't like some shock. This isn't like some like big surprise that this is happening. This is a very old tale. And the cure to it, the end game of all this, is that Jews need to be in Israel, right? That's what the whole thing is. It's their final home. And then once they're in Israel, they stop this pattern of being exiled and then back and forth, exile, back and forth. But there's many pages saying, oh, the Jews have been in exile ever since this time. They go into a country, everything is really great. Then God sets up another place for them to go just before that country kicks them out, right? So it's like everybody agrees that this is this is the story, you know? Like everybody agrees that this is a problem, and everybody agrees that this is what's going on. Now, the Torah, what's great about it is it says that this keeps. I'm not quite sure where it lands on the behaviors of Joseph, but in general, it is extremely critical of bad behavior by Jewish people, particularly when it comes to hedonism. So idol worship, sex stuff, all like distraction, all these things that we think of as things that are, the Jews are doing to us are halakhically, in terms of like the code of the Torah, they're exactly what the Torah is telling you not to do, or else you will be thrown out to the next place. So if this is what drives me crazy about Reform Jews, they don't know any of this. Like your normal average Reform Jew, who's like most Jews that people know, 80% or something, they just think, oh, Jews are victims, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand that this pattern of misbehavior, or maybe not misbehavior, but idol worshiping, sort of bad degeneracy and descent into these gross behaviors, they don't understand that that is the story. That is the point of the story. So in any case, I started to sort of realize, like, oh, this is like, people know this. Also in this Torah I'm reading, it says, when Esau and Jacob are sort of splitting up, Esau, this is before Joseph, becomes sort of the father of more warlike people, whereas Jacob is the father of the Jews. And it says in the text of the Genesis, that the Jews will have their voice. It's like about their voice, like the Jews' voice. Like that's their strength, not war, but the voice. So that's true, right? That is the strength of this nation of people. Once you accept all of these things as true, you start to realize, oh, okay, this is a people. It's a weird phenomenon. It's a weird people. But this is how it's been for a long time. There's pros, there's cons. You should be aware of it. I totally think the thing that drives me the most crazy is ADL, AIPAC. Thomas Massey had a great interview on Tucker where he's talking about AIPAC, the America-Israel Super PAC, one of the biggest spends in Washington, D.C. He says they basically assigned him to write like a pro-Israel essay, and he didn't do it. And then they spent like millions of dollars trying to get him out of his seat. This is a foreign country. Trying to destroy American because he won't write an essay on their behalf. It's like, how the F does whoever is running that AIPAC, and the way he presents it is like, it was almost an afterthought for them. They were like, oh, we're not even thinking about it. This is just par for the course. If you don't do what we say, boom, we're running $1 million of ads against you in whatever locale. We're going to get you out for somebody who does say what we want. That cannot go on anymore. I mean, unless we want to be kicked out again, unless America, the best thing that's ever happened to Jews ever, unless we want to, get thrown out again, that can't go on. And it's the same thing with ADL, man. It's like it's going after Musk, messing with people. Messing with people like Kanye for no reason because, he doesn't completely do what you say, trying to destroy people's lives, these for almost nothing, trying to destroy Musk because he won't say what you want. What is going to happen? What do they think is going to happen? They think they're just going to do that. They're going to ostracize everybody. Jews make up 2% of the population. You're going to ostracize 98%? No, you're not. And this is why we're here. And it's like, I just say, the Jews that are doing this they're not following the Torah. They're doing the exact opposite. They're doing the things that the Torah tell them specifically, do not do this. But they do it anyway because they're not conscious of it. And we're just doing this pattern again. And so it's endlessly infuriating. And look, so let me finish up by saying that it's clear that what's lacking in the Western world is an immune system. We've lost this immune system that is people have decided that being, having any type of preference towards your neighbors is racist, right? Or preference towards your ethnic group, or preference, towards the history of America, towards America as a place that is not just for everyone. That makes you racist, and it's the death of an immune system, right? It's like a body. It's lacking all immune response. It's like HIV, right? Now, on the other side of that, it just kills any ability to deal with foreign objects, foreign invaders, anything. It kills it all. And many people blame the Jews for that. Now, is that at the Jews' fault? I mean, look, you can say that back to Joseph, this has been something that is a problem throughout history. Now, I don't know. I think every American nationalist movement is also full of Jews, right? Including me. So I don't 100% know if you can completely blame it. But regardless, it should be openly discussed. It should be openly questioned. Organizations who are participating in this stuff that are completely run by Jews, they should be saying, hey, why is this happening? The question should be asked, right? Because once that immune system's back, it's like black people. Black people, in 50 years ago, they had 75% wedlock marriages. Now it's 25%. Why is that? It's because when you don't hold people responsible for their race, for the others of their group, when you stop doing that, they act however the fuck they want. So that's what the immune system is. It's good. It's good to hold people responsible for these behaviors. And Jews are no different. They should be held responsible. We can't criticize Jews at all? Or they're going to die? That's not a tenable situation. You understand it coming from World War II and coming from the Holocaust, blah, 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 and even MartyrMade. He had this episode about this. It's understandable that this period has been extremely sensitive about this stuff, right? It's understandable that there's a greater sensitivity. But it doesn't change, excuse the extremely manipulative and terrible behavior it takes to censor any criticism of one of the most powerful groups in the world and in America. It's just untenable. You have to be able to take criticism. This is why white people win. White people take a ton of criticism, and they're like, okay, you got to be able to take it, or else you're just going to get kicked out. So anyway, we see this all leading up to Trump, and people like Elon. Elon says he's a philo-Semite. A lot of anti-Semitic people we can't vote. Nick Fuentes. We can't vote for Trump because he cares about Israel. Look, just accept that the Jews are a pain in the ass. They're a factor in the game. They're a political factor in the game. Should they be called out on it? Yes. Should they be, seen accurately? Absolutely. But they're not pulling every single lever. And every time that, something comes out, the people reacting, the reason they're look, I can't speak for everybody. I'm sure many of these people are paid shills, right? We all know Hasbara. We all know Israel spends tons of money on this crap. I'm not saying there aren't plenty of paid shills around. But most of these Jewish people that you're seeing who are having these reactions, these intense reactions, they're just waking up and they're thinking, they arrive to the morning and the day like you do, and they're thinking, well, wait a second, why are all these people, I'm not doing anything bad. Why are all these people talking about Jews? I didn't do this. This isn't me. I'm not getting any special anything. I got here myself. So why are they talking about me? And so, of course, look, if you're seeing that in feeds all the time, you're gonna eventually react. It's impossible not to. So I think that that's most of what's happening. And I think that, somebody like Trump, to go the reason he has been able to rise to power, I believe, I've always said this, is because he split the Jews. He split the Jews into gross lefty ones and based ones. And the based ones are all smart enough to vote for him. And I don't know. I mean, that to me seems like the right direction. Is Elon a philo-Semite? Probably not. I mean, I think he's a Mischling himself. But he he's just doing that because it's power. It's just a power game. He's saying, "Oh, I need this group. It's no skin off my back. Let's get this group to participate." Blah blah. But then he calls them out too. He says, "ADL, fuck you. You're going to come after me. Fuck you, ADL. Fuck you, CAA, RE Emmanuel. Like, you can't fucking say this shit to me." And that's the vibe, man. That's the vibe. What Tucker's done is great. You know, that they need to be called out, but to then obsess that, oh, we can't vote for Trump because he's managed to split off the right wing of this extremely powerful group, that's retarded. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. It just seems like, I think Fuentes serves a purpose. I think his heckler's veto is good, but the answer to this, in every single, people forget, every single one of these countries that has kicked Jews out, 100 years later, they let them back in. And they let them back in because they do good shit. We do offer a lot. Jews do offer a lot of shit. It's not like some other groups that's just pure, nothing. Like, look, I'm not saying there's any group that's pure nothing. I don't believe that, and that certainly wasn't directed at Black people. I like Black people, especially Black Americans. I mean, they have more of a right to this place than most people. But what I'm saying is, it's just a nation, man. It's just a nation, and that nation needs to be called out, and that nation needs to stop these ridiculous actions, and that's my message to them. Like, what you've done is not working. Everybody talks about how Israel is such a great, they're so good at PR. It's like, no, they're horrible at PR. They've been in existence for 50 years and everybody hates them. Like, good fucking job. They did a horrible job. So anyway, but on the other hand, look, man, the world is full of these Jews. I just was hanging out. There's a Jew who owns a bar here. He wakes up, he works super hard. I see him. He has kids. He's worried about his bar. That's what he's doing all day. He's just a guy who has a bar. And I know so many, like, really kind of just normal ass Jewish people, and they wake up, and when people start saying, "Hey, we hate you," or, "Hey, look at the Jews doing this," of course they just react with sort of a, like, why? Wait, why? Why am I being, because they're not really super well educated on this. Anyway, let me finish up by just another Nietzsche quote. So there's a great Nietzsche quote about the table of values that each different group has. And this is a horrible, horrible translation, and because I don't have my actual one with me. So let me just go through this quickly, but I excuse the badness of the translation, but I'll explain it. So, whatever maketh them rule and conquer and shine, to the dismay and envy of their neighbors, they regard as the high and foremost thing, the test and meaning of all else. Verily, my brother, if thou knewest what a people's need, its land, its sky, and its neighbor, then you wouldst thou divine the law of its surmountings, and why it climbeth up the ladder to its hope. Always shall thou be the foremost and prominent above others. No one shall thy jealous soul love except a friend, that made the soul of a Greek thrill. Thereby he went his way to greatness. So it's trying to say that Greeks, this is such a bad translation. He's basically going through the four great races: Germans, Jews, Persians, Greeks at the time. And he's saying which value is their core, like, superpower. And for Greeks, God, it's like I almost can't even tell in this one, but it's like loyalty, I guess. Always shall thou be a foremost and prominent above others. No one shall thy jealous soul love except a friend. Yeah, it's like basically saying, like, nationalism. I can't even tell. Anyway, the second one is to speak truth and be skillful with bow and arrow. So seem to like pleasing and hard to the people from whom I come from. He's speaking as Zarathustra, so he's talking about being Persian. So, to be good with the arrow and speak the truth. To honor thy mother and father, and from the root of the soul do their will. This table surmounting hung among another people who became powerful and permanent thereby. That's the Jews. So he's saying our core thing is honor thy mother and father. And then he says to have fidelity, and for the sake of fidelity to risk honor and blood, even in evil and dangerous courses. This is the Germans. Teaching itself so, another people mastered, and thus mastering itself became pregnant and heavy with great hopes. Okay, so this thing of honoring thy mother and father, I'm horrible at this. But biblically speaking, I have realized that if you come from an evil place, I'm not calling my parents evil, but I'm saying the milieu of extreme leftism is definitely evil that they come from. It is your responsibility as a righteous person. You can leave it behind. But according to Nietzsche, I'm not doing my, Jewish value here because I'm sort of abandoning that. But in supporting Trump and being who I've become, I've lost pretty much my entire Jewish family. The other side of me, the WASP, I've always had much more respect for that side. They're just good people. They put a preference on goodness. On my grandmother, the only grandparent that really I knew well. She went to church all the time. She was a member of the, Illinois. She was in Geneva, the historical society. She was just a deeply good person. And, I can't avoid the fact that I feel more towards her than the other side, right? I can't pretend otherwise. And, what I'll say is, for me, my loyalty at the end of the day is to America. It's to the American people. That is what I am. This political entity that is Israel, that's like, the ADL, it's like, or Apex thinks it's speaking on behalf of me. Absolutely not. I have nothing to do with this political entity. As I said, I did stand with us. Political Zionism has nothing to do with me. Now, religious Zionism, in terms of the book, of the finding the home of the Jewish people, like blah, 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 all this stuff, yeah, sure. I'm unavoidably connected to that. But this modern libtard state of Israel, I have nothing to do with it. I do not care about it at all. And the political entity, I do not care about it at all. The word Israel actually technically means like the people. So I don't want to say that. I'm not saying I don't care about the people. Of course I do. I can't avoid it. But I would just want to speak for myself. All I can speak for is myself, that when it comes down to it, my loyalty is to the United States of America. That is what I care about. And, it hurts to imagine a world in which my people, or people that I am associated with, could have the power to destroy America. Look, we have 8 weeks till the election, and that's the end, man. No matter what, that's the end of America 1.0. Now, a lot of people will say that America 1.0 ended with the Civil Rights Act, and that's true. The Civil Rights Act, if you read Age of Entitlement, that really is where America became like a communist project or a socialist project, not what America is supposed to be, which is like a libertarian project, basically. So that's true. It became race communism at the Civil Rights Act, but nobody recognized that at the time, amazingly. And Jews, left-wing Jews have been a huge part of that, and probably for the Josephwood reason, probably because they deep inside themselves felt like they weren't at home. So they wanted to make it so that nobody could feel at home, right? Which is horrible. It's a horrible, evil thing, and I want absolutely no part of that. But we do have an opportunity here with Trump. And if Trump wins, it's one path, and if Kamala wins, it's another path. And, 8 weeks until really we enter this new timeline. And, if it's Kamala, things are going to get real dark. And if it's Trump, it's going to be great. I mean, it'll be that America survived. And hopefully these problems will get dealt with, et cetera. If Kamala, but even still, it will be a very different America because the regime will have to accept that it has been displaced. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to accept it, but it has to play with it to some degree. So, I would say what's kind of hilarious to me leading up to this is how people don't seem to realize that in 8 weeks, like the entire destiny of the globe is going to change no matter what. And I think, for those of us on the base side, it's good either way. I mean, obviously it's terrible if Kamala wins, but it will tell us that we know, we know who our enemies are, right? And we know very clearly that this is an existential fight. And then if Trump wins, we get to have fun with it, and we get to be in control. So anyway, okay, that's my address for today. Let me know what you think of these things. Follow me, Disgraced Prop, on Twitter, and my Substack is called The Carousel. And yeah, let me know what you think of this.